It was a beautiful fall afternoon, and I'm sitting in my corner office, and I love my corner office. It had its disadvantages, but it had these 4 huge windows that would let in so much light that I rarely needed to turn on the lights in my office. It was great. So I'm sitting there, and I have a free hour ahead of me. I don't have a client scheduled, so maybe like some of you, I'm trying to decide, am I going to make good use of my time, or am I going to waste my time? Because I have like 13 notifications that I haven't even checked yet. So this day, I chose to make good use of my time. There was a man by the name of Joe Dispenza, and I had been watching some of his YouTube videos, and what he was talking about had me really interested. So I had saved a video that I was going to watch, and that was my plan. Joe Dispenza was a chiropractor who was also a triathlete. And one day during the triathlon or the bike portion of the triathlon, he was hit from behind by a vehicle that was going about 55 miles an hour. It catapulted him from his bike. He landed flat on his back and shattered 7 vertebrae in his spine. What was suggested to him was surgery that would involve rods and plates and screws, surgery that would significantly limit his mobility for the rest of his life. So what he decided to do was to teach himself how to use the body's ability to heal itself to heal his spine. And what he has taught me is how to heal my mind. So I'm in my office, I'm watching this video, and it gets to a part where he's talking about the different thoughts that we think that lead to states of feeling stressed and anxious and worried and confused. And he asked the question, what would you rather think instead? And I had never considered that ever in my life. Up until that point in my life, I thought that whatever my brain flashed across my forehead, that's what we were going to be thinking about. Oh, we're going to be thinking about that? Oh, we're going to be thinking about that for the next 5 hours? Okay. So what he said about what would you rather think, like really, really interested me. But at that time, I was not able to wrap my head around it. I wanted so badly just to say, Keith, you're a good person, like just that. But I couldn't get there. And normally, I would have given up at that point and just walked away. What I realize now is that I was being prepared. About a year before that, I was getting ready to go to a men's program that a therapist I was seeing at the time had recommended. So the program started on a Thursday, and the Sunday before, we had a Zoom call. And so I'm in my house. It's empty, nobody's home, it's quiet. I have my favorite cup of coffee, I'm sitting on my couch, I have the recliner out, my laptop's on my lap, and then these different men start popping up on the screen. And there are about 20, 25 of us. And the purpose of the call was just to discuss what's your purpose for coming here, here's how you can get the most out of this experience. And as I'm looking at these men on the screen, I just start thinking, these guys look so put together. They look so polished. They look successful. And it just took me off guard. I wasn't prepared for that. I was like, I'm the therapist here. Like, what am I doing here? I just felt like a fish out of water. And then a very tragic and unfortunately very familiar thought crossed my mind. You're such a foolish idiot. And this time, I asked myself a question. I said, Keith, when did you start telling yourself that? And I realized it was probably my mid to late 20s is when that started. Anytime something broke, anytime something went wrong, anytime something didn't go my way, that phrase over and over and over again. Probably over 20 years, probably 10,000 times I told myself that. And it was no wonder that I felt insecure and I felt so unsafe with myself, and I couldn't get away from myself. And I could not figure out how to stop mentally torturing myself. I was not thriving. I was barely living. I was surviving. And it led me to some really dark places. So I go to this men's program and was blown away by how much healing can actually occur when men have the courage to be vulnerable with each other. It was shocking to me. I also left with a feeling that I hadn't felt in quite a long time: confidence. So I get back from the program and they split us up into groups of 10 men. And we meet weekly to support each other, encourage each other, challenge each other, hold each other accountable if that's what someone would like. So a couple weeks after the program, we're on a Zoom call and one of the men tells me, he said, Keith, you need to learn how to validate yourself. And I didn't say anything, but I thought that's a great idea and I have no idea how to do that. So a few months later, I bumped into my wife in the kitchen and we were having some difficulties in our marriage at the time. And she showed me a video that she had found that again confirmed the need for Keith to learn how to validate himself. And then more time goes by and we hit a place in our marriage where we had the classic irreconcilable differences and decided to divorce. What I realize now was the next decision that I made was one of the most important decisions in my life. Is Keith going to jump back into a relationship to get validation, or is he going to figure this out for himself? So I chose to figure it out for myself. Somewhere along the way, I had heard someone suggest the idea of telling yourself what you're proud of yourself for. So that's where I started. What I noticed after about a week and a half was that I was noticing things that I was proud of myself for that no one else would have ever seen. How much television I watched, what food I ate, when I ate, how much I ate. Like no one would have ever seen those things. And what I noticed after a few weeks is I was smiling off and on. And I remember talking to a friend one time and just describing kind of what I'd been through the last few weeks. And he said, Keith, it sounds like you're happy. And I was like, is that what this feels like? This is pretty nice. So I was back in my office and I had just finished watching the Joe Dispenza video. And what would you rather think? I'm still not able to quite connect all the dots. But I started doing his meditations a couple times a week. And what I noticed was just this sense of peace that I had never experienced in my life. And a belief that things were going to get better, even if I didn't know how. A few months later, I was having dinner with a friend. And within the first few minutes, he asked me a question that I had never been asked before. He said, Keith, do you love yourself? And the question took me aback. I think I just stared at him for about 5 seconds and then said, well, I don't hate myself anymore. He said, okay, so the answer is no, you don't love yourself. So he emailed me a packet of information. So I printed it off. On the cover, it said mirror work. I had never heard of mirror work before. So I turned the page, and mirror work is essentially standing in front of a mirror, looking into your own eyes, and saying certain phrases. This sounds interesting. Okay. So I turned the page. The first thing you're supposed to say is, I'm willing to begin loving you. So that stack of paper sat on my desk for about 3 weeks. You want me to say what while I'm looking into my eyes? Are you crazy? So then after 3 weeks, I just thought, Keith, what have you got to lose? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? So I wasn't comfortable at the time, I'm willing to begin loving myself. I was comfortable with, I'm willing to begin learning how to love myself. So I get in my bathroom, I stand in front of the mirror, I'm looking into my eyes, and the next 4 minutes were just the most incredible experience that I've ever had. First, there was so much joy and tears, like, Keith, you're figuring it out. You're figuring out how to be kind to yourself. And then there was sadness. You're how old? What if you would have figured this out 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Like, where would you be now? And then joy, like, but you made it, you're here. So I had to figure out who this person was, so who came up with this. Her name is Louise Hay. She was born in California in the mid-1920s. She had a very difficult childhood with poverty, abuse, and neglect. In the 50s, she moved out to New York and became a model. In the 70s, she was a very prominent figure in the New Thought movement, which taught that our thoughts shape our reality. Also in the 70s, she developed cervical cancer. And also, like Joe Dispenza, she decided not to go the medical route. She used nutrition, therapy, and positive self-talk, positive affirmations, and within 6 months, she was cancer-free. So I'm in my office again, apparently a popular place for me. This was not a corner office. This had no windows. This was very tough. But I'm watching a Louise Hay video. And she gets to a point where she suggests repeating a phrase over and over and over again. And the phrase is, I approve of myself. I approve of myself. I approve of myself. And she said, say that 300 to 400 times a day. And that's where I realized a couple things. One is the words aren't that important. The words are important, but it's mostly about feeling those words. Like, what does it feel like when you tell yourself, I approve of myself, as you just let that wash over you? The other thing I realized is that I had been doing it all wrong. I was saying some positive affirmations in the morning and expecting things to change. Kind of like going to the gym once a week and wondering why I'm not getting any stronger. Well, you're not doing it enough, Keith. So, as I started to practice telling myself, that's what I realized, was that this had to become a daily practice for me that occurred all day long. So, as I started practicing that, what I've realized is that I'm able to be so much kinder to myself. I can laugh at myself when I make a mistake. I learned how to talk to myself when I'm feeling scared, when I'm angry, when I'm lonely, so I can get back to that place of peace and confidence. That phrase I mentioned, I haven't said that or thought that in over 2 years. And in fact, it makes my stomach upset just thinking about it. Now what I say to myself is, I approve of myself. I'm safe. I'm enough just as I am. Everything is working out exactly as it should be. And my favorite, I love you, Keith. I really, really love you. The title of Louise Hay's book is You Can Heal Your Life, and I'm here to tell you that is 100% true. Thank you.